Al-24 Midnight News, and to the headlines. UN Security Council members voiced concerns on Thursday and stressed the need to maintain a status quo at Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Al-Quds. A unilateral ceasefire called by Vladimir Putin appears to have a little effect on the ground, with Ukrainian officials accusing Russians of opening fire in several areas. For the third straight day, the House of Representatives remained at an impasse as the party leader, Kevin McCarthy, failed and failed again in an unbearable string of bailout to win enough votes. Hello again, I'm your host Abdurrahim Kashor, and those were today's top stories. The Council of the Nation is taking part on Friday and Saturday in Cairo at meetings of Executive Committee, the two commissions of the legal team, and the Arab Parliamentary Merit Award organized in the Arab Inter-Parliamentary Union, said the statement from Council on Thursday. The agenda of Legal Team Committee will focus on examining orientation laws relating to the environment, intellectual property, and cybercrime, while the Merit Award Committee will study the list and files of the candidates for the different parliamentary categories. With regard to the Executive Committee, its agenda includes the examining of several regulatory and administrative items. People Dispatch has indicated that fighting between the Sahrawi People's Liberation Army and Moroccan occupying forces has intensified in recent days. The international media platform specialized in backing freedom movements around the world has stressed that Moroccan forces, which illegally occupied the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, have come under repeated bombing by the Sahrawi People's Liberation Army. Moroccan forces currently occupy over 80% of territories of Western Sahara, which remains classified by the UN as among the last countries still awaiting decolonization. A survey carried out as sociometrical found 78% of Spanish people believe that Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez was wrong to change Madrid's position on Western Sahara. Pedro Sanchez's change of 40 years long position of Spain over the Sahrawi people's right to full self-determination is therefore rejected by the majority of Spanish people. The UN mission in Libya has welcomed the joint declaration announced in Cairo by Speaker of Libya's House of Representatives, Akila Saleh, and the Chairman of the High Council of State, Khaled al-Mashri, which they agreed on drawing a clear and specified roadmap later in order to hold the long-awaited elections.
The UN mission strongly encourages the two chambers to now swiftly reach a complete and final agreement, including on the continuous issues to finalize the steps required to take the country to inclusive national elections within a specific time frame. The UN mission in Libya reiterates the obligations of political leaders in Libya to demonstrate a genuine and continuous commitment towards achieving a lasting peace by building on previous agreements of the HOR and HCS, aiming to resolving the political crisis through elections as soon as possible.
Still in the African continent, the Tunisian presidency stated that President Kais Saied sacked Minister of Trade Fadil al-Rabhi on Friday amid economic crisis rocking the country and record inflation rates. The annual inflation rate in December exceeded the 10% barrier, with severe financial crisis caused the loss of many foodstuffs from stores. President Kais Saied blamed the speculator and sometimes accused the opposition of causing crises. To the Middle East, the Palestinian authorities have condemned the last move by occupation government's new security cabinet, which approved a series of punitive steps against Palestinian leadership. Punitive measures come in response to the Palestinian appeal to the International Court of Justice to request an advisory opinion on the Zionist occupation of Palestinian territories. The members of the UN Security Council have expressed concern and stressed the need to maintain the status quo at Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Al-Quds. More about this story with Mohammed Khatou.
However, the members of the UN Security Council did not commit to any action days after the Zionist entity's new far-right security minister made a controversial visit to the site, which Palestinian leaders described as an unprecedented provocation. The decades-old status quo at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound allows only Muslim worshippers to pray at this site, which is Islam's third holiest site after Mecca and Medina in Saudi Arabia. Israel's far-right groups have long attempted to change the status quo and allow Jewish prayers at the site. Palestinian UN envoy Riyad Mansour pushed for the Security Council on Thursday to take action against Israel over Ben Gvir's provocative actions.
What red line does Israel need to cross for the Security Council to finally say enough is enough and to act accordingly? When are you going to act?
Senior UN political affairs official Khalid Khiyari told the Council it is the first visit to the holy site by a Zionist entity's cabinet minister since 2017.
On 3rd January, Israel's new Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, conducted a visit accompanied by heavy security detail to the holy site in Jerusalem. The visit was the first to the site by an Israeli minister since 2017.
For his part, the U.S. Deputy UN Ambassador Robert Wood told the Council that the United States is committed to a two-state solution, stressing that Prime Minister Netanyahu's governing platform calls for the preservation of the holy site status quo and that the U.S. expects Israel to follow the commitment.
Let me start by saying that the United States remains committed to a two-state solution in which Israel lives in peace and security alongside a Palestinian state. And we are concerned by any unilateral acts that exacerbate tensions or undermine the viability of a two-state solution. We note that Prime Minister Netanyahu's governing platform calls for preservation of the status quo with relation to the holy places. We expect the government of Israel to follow through on that commitment.
It is worth recalling that the UN Security Council has adopted several resolutions on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict over the years and has always supported the two-state solution to achieve peace in the Middle East.
Syria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Bassem Sabah, confirmed during a session of the Security Council on the chemical fire in Syria that his country continues cooperation with the Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. Sabah indicated that Syria voluntarily acceded to Chemical Weapons Convention in the year of 2013 and ended the destruction of all its stocks and production facilities in 2014, despite the difficult circumstances it was going through. To the European continent, the 36-hour unilateral ceasefire in Ukraine ordered by Russian President Vladimir Putin on the occasion of Orthodox Christmas fall few hours after beginning, as well as accuses Russia of trying to use Christmas as a cover to stop the advance of the Ukrainian army and regroup its forces. Hussein Burkan on what follow.
Vladimir Putin on Thursday ordered his army to observe a ceasefire along the entire line of contact between the parties in Ukraine on January 6 and 7, the first major truce since the start of the Russian operation in Ukraine. Despite this announcement, artillery duels continue on Friday. Russian Defense Ministry accused the Ukrainian armed forces of shelling Russian positions in Ukraine despite the decision.
Despite
the fact that the Russian military observed the ceasefire today, the Kiev regime continued shelling residential areas and positions of Russian troops.
Pentagon in turn said that the world was deeply skeptical about Russian President Vladimir Putin's call for a 36-hour ceasefire in Ukraine.
Understandably, I think that there's significant skepticism, both here in the U.S. and around the world right now, given Russia's long track record of propaganda, disinformation, and its relentless attacks against Ukrainian cities.
Head of diplomacy of the European Union, Joseph Borrell, described the ceasefire announced by Moscow and Ukraine on the occasion of Orthodox Christmas as hypocrisy, judging it not credible.
The Kremlin completely lacks credibility, and this declaration of a desire for a unilateral ceasefire is not credible. We must see concrete things, we must see concrete actions on the ground on the part of Russia.
For his part, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that peace in war-torn Ukraine was still not on the horizon, and that talks between Moscow and Kiev to bring the conflict to an end were not possible yet.
It is my belief that we are still far from a moment in which a serious peace negotiation is possible. At the present moment, I think it's important to do everything we can in order to minimize the negative impact.
The Russian truce is being offered less than a week after a Ukrainian strike on New Year's Eve left at least 89 people dead in Makivka, which aroused criticism in Russia against the military command.
According to Austria's defense ministry, a dispute at military barracks on Friday culminated in multiple bullets being fired, which resulted in the death of a recruit and injury to an officer. The incident happened shortly before 7 a.m. at the barracks south of Vienna. The 20-year-old conscript who started this military service in September and had been serving as a guard there since mid-October threatened his fellow soldiers during a changing of the guard and physically attacked the officer in charge, according to the same source. In dramatic votes for House Speaker, Friday Republican Kevin McCarthy picked up support from right-wing hardliners in the U.S. House of Representatives who had blocked his speaker bid. However, this was not enough to end the deepest congressional dysfunction in more than 150 years in the United States. Nabil Khazini in this report.
The chair of the hall, symbolizing the heart of the American democracy, is still empty. The U.S. House remains for a third night in a row without a speaker, the longest the chamber has gone leaderless in a century.
No member-elect having received a majority of the votes cast, a speaker has not been elected.
This man is not already victorious, but Kevin McCarthy finally begins to see light at the end of a long and a dark tunnel in a Congress still paralyzed.
Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker.
Kevin McCarthy for Speaker of the 118th Congress.
After 11 unsuccessful rounds, he managed to win the majority of the votes. All 212 Democrats have unanimously backed House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. However, no matter when voters in the House of Representatives finally agree upon a speaker, the scenes of this spectacle will continue until a president is elected. What is special is that this critical moment in the US democracy coincides with the 2-year anniversary of January 6 attack on the Capitol. 2 years ago, rioters stormed and temporarily occupied part of the US Capitol in protest of their belief that the 2020 presidential election had been stolen, an anniversary marked by the US president with an award ceremony.
Despite our differences of opinion, we must say clearly, with a united voice, that there's no place, none, zero place in America for voter intimidation, zero, never, and political violence. They're completely contrary to the notion of democracy.
The House Speaker presides over the lower house of Congress and is second in line in the US presidency. If no speaker is elected, the United States House of Representatives essentially becomes a useless entity.
U.S. representatives observed a minute silence in memory of the deadly January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol. to mark the second anniversary on the incident on Friday. It is worth recalling that 5 people died and more than 140 police officers were injured at this time 2 years ago, when supporters of then President Donald Trump violently broke into the U.S. Capitol as lawmakers and Trump's Vice President Mike Pence were set to certify his loss to Democrat Joe Biden.
Thank you to the families for considering us worthy to share your grief, to honor your loss. When we had the gold medal ceremony, the highest honor the Congress can bestow, I said at that time, your acceptance of that gold medal in honor of your family members' courage brought luster.
To South American continent, President of Brazil, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, met this Friday for the first time the 37 ministers and urged them to promote democracy in favor of people abandoned by the state. When inaugurating the first ministerial meeting, he affirmed that Brazil had been under an authoritarian government for 4 years, referring to the management of the far-right Jair Bolsonaro.
We realized that this country was being destroyed on the social, educational, health policies levels. All this has been penalized, and we are committed to rebuilding this country. Everyone knows that I have an obsession to end hunger in this country, and I have an obsession to guarantee and improve the health of this people.
Peru's Defense Minister Jorge Chavez accused foreigners of stirring up protests with a view to encouraging independence in the country's south, as tensions simmer after former President Pedro Castillo was ousted last month. Roadblocks and protests were still dotting cities across Peru, demanding President Diana Boluarte to step down and the Congress to be closed.
According to information received from intelligence, which is being handled by the Ministry of the Interior and the National Police, we have received this type of information in which foreign citizens have entered not only with the intention of stirring up violence, but also to integrate the separatist idea of a part of our region in the country, as you are aware.
I believe that the right to peaceful protests ends where the other rights are violated, and those other rights violated, the blocking of roads, not allowing people to transit freely.
The first international oil extraction contract was signed in Kabul, a $750 million package that will allow Beijing to search for oil in northern Afghanistan and give the new Afghan regime both the foreign investment and international exposure it needs. The agreement signed this Thursday between the Chinese company Xinjiang Central Asia Petroleum and Gas Co. and the Taliban will allow this latter to explore oil in the Amur Darya Basin in Afghanistan.
I, as the Economic Deputy Prime Minister of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, pledge to cooperate with the contracting company. All government institutions and organizations will fully assist the contracting company.
The Amur Darya oil project is an important project of practical cooperation between China and Afghanistan. Over the past year, the relevant departments of Chinese and Afghanistan governments have implemented the high-level consensus between the two sides and made a lot of efforts to steadily restart the project.
In Africa, the M23 movement rebels announced their withdrawal from a strategic military base that the movement seized last October in Romangabo region, Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. The movement said in a statement that it would hand over the camp to the regional forces in East Africa. This follows its announcement last month of plans to withdraw from captured territory as a goodwill gesture in line with agreements of the region's leaders summit in the Angolan capital Luanda last November. And now for more international news, let's follow this roundup by Morobleo.
Thousands of Houthi supporters marched on the streets of the Houthi-controlled Yemeni capital of Sana'a on Friday to denounce a blockade imposed by the Saudi-led coalition since it intervened in the Yemeni conflict in 2015.
We consider the continuation of the blockade a war that will be faced with a military reaction that will affect and hurt the coalition of aggression in an unprecedented and unexpected way.
Defense Secretary Luis Crescencio Sandoval told reporters that the military operation that resulted Thursday in northwestern Mexico in the arrest of Ovidio Guzman, one of the sons of drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, left 10 soldiers engaged and 19 among the suspected criminals, the government announced on Friday.
35 soldiers were injured by firearms and are receiving medical treatment in hospitals, both civilians and military. Likewise, so far, there is no information about any innocent civilians who may have lost their lives as a result of these operations. The authorities have counted 19 deaths among the offenders, and 21 members of these criminal groups have been arrested.
A massive Pacific storm unleashed high winds, torrential rains, and heavy snow across California for a second day, knocking out power to tens of thousands of homes and disrupting road travel with flash floods, rock slides, and toppled trees. The Kilauea volcano in Hawaii began erupting on Thursday, the U.S. Geological Service's Volcano Activity Notice said, after detecting a glow in the summit-producing smog that is confined within the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. The volcano alert level was raised to red after an evaluation of the eruption and associated hazards, the notice said.
Coming back to Algeria, the 36th edition of the Asiha Tamarasat International Exhibition wound up on Friday after 15 days of economic activities and exchanges. The exhibition was an economic space to strengthen Algeria's presence in the markets of neighboring countries and to promote the province of Tamarasat as trade pole by excellence. The Asiha Tamarasat International Exhibition further strengthens in each edition the bonds of friendship and economic partnership, such as barter, trade, and other, and opens a new horizon for economic operators in the public and private sectors.
The national economic operators have demonstrated the huge capabilities that Algeria holds in the field of international trade. Likewise, African countries, Sahel countries, and neighboring countries have showed interest in the Algerian market, while Algeria has expressed readiness to open up to their markets too.
Coming to sport now, the Algerian local national team continues its preparation for a friendly match against Ghana a few days before the start of the CHAN tournament, where Bouguera's man took the pre-final training session in an open session for the media at the newly built Nelson Mandela Stadium. It is worth noting that the local national team is playing Ghanaians this evening at 5 p.m.
Our players are very morally motivated to deliver an outstanding performance, especially that the championship will take place in front of our fans, which we have long been waiting for. Meeting the fans will increase the enthusiasm of the players and make them give the best of themselves. The Ghanaian team is a strong team with good players. It has been well examined. I know them very well. They play clean football, and the way they plan their attacks is very quick. And this is why we have chosen to play with this team. At the beginning of the training camp, we had 5 injured players, namely Mahyouz, Kaddad, Bakir, Merizak and Tahir. These players have done the necessary work with the medical staff, and we expect them to be ready in the first game against Libya.
The newly built Baraki Stadium in Algeria's capital, named Nelson Mandela Stadium, is now ready to host the African Cup of Nations CHAN 2023. After dealing with the final touches and the necessary equipment in the facility, the Algerian Ministry of Housing, which was in charge of the stadium's construction, organized a day for journalists yesterday to reveal the face of Final Stadium, which will also host the opening and closing ceremonies.
الملعب راهو جاهز.
The stadium is ready in all respects to host this competition. The continuous field visits and control by the Minister of Housing and Urban Planning, as well as the instructions he issued, have resulted in accelerating the process of equipping this facility, which can now be used to embrace this continental competition. This stadium is considered a jewel for our country, Algeria, but in order for it to remain so, it must be preserved.
تستفاد منه إذا كان استحفظنا به.
الملعب جاهز والحمد لله.
Alhamdulillah, the stadium is ready and the technical card for the stadium is as follows. This project was built on a land area of 43 hectares. This sports facility consists of a football field with a capacity of 47,000 seats. This stadium contains 4 platforms where we were able to place 36 cameras for direct television broadcast. There is a space for journalists that can accommodate 200 journalists. This stadium also contains 4 dressing rooms, which allows 2 matches to be played in one day. This facility has been equipped with the latest technology to match the level of international stadiums. This is the information about the stadium, and we have done all the tests, and alhamdulillah, everything is ready now.
Such a beautiful stadium for our Algeria, and we need another beautiful title for our national team. For now, good night.